On the edge of a small town, there stood a house that everyone avoided. It wasn't the kind of place that screamed haunted. No peeling paint or broken windows. In fact, that was the strangest part. The house looked too perfect. The shutters were always straight, the lawn never overgrown, the windows always gleaming as if they had just been polished. But no one ever saw anyone tending to it. Children dared each other to knock on the front door, but few made it past the rusted iron gate. Those who did said the air inside the yard felt wrong, thick and heavy, as though the earth itself didn't want you there. One October night, four friends, Eli, Marissa, Jonah, and Claire, decided to prove the legends were nothing but stories. They were old enough now, high school seniors, restless and eager for something thrilling before they scattered after graduation. Eli brought a flashlight, Jonah carried his phone for evidence, and Claire had a crowbar, insisting they might need it. Marissa, the quietest of them, didn't want to go at all, but she followed because she always did. The gate creaked when they pushed it open, loud enough to make them all freeze. Still, they pressed on. The porch groaned under their steps, but when Eli touched the doorknob, it turned easily. No lock, no alarm, just open. Inside, the air was cold. Not the kind of cold that prickles your skin, but a deeper cold that seemed to sink right into their bones. The house smelled faintly of lavender, but stale, as if the flowers had died years ago, and the scent clung to the walls. Everything inside was spotless. The furniture shone as if recently polished. The wallpaper was bright and clean. And yet, there was dust on the floor. Heavy, undisturbed dust, except for one set of footprints leading deeper inside. They followed. Each room was stranger than the last. The kitchen was stocked with dishes, gleaming and stacked neatly, but the refrigerator hummed with nothing inside. The living room had a fire laid carefully in the hearth, unlit but ready. Upstairs, the bedrooms were made with crisp sheets and folded clothes in the drawers, though all in styles from decades ago. And always the footprints, bare, small, like a child's. Jonah laughed nervously, trying to break the tension. Probably some squatter, or the realtor, right? Keeping it staged, but none of them believed that. At the end of the hallway upstairs was a door, painted white with a small brass handle. The footprints stopped in front of it. Claire tried the knob. Locked. She slid the crowbar into the frame and pried. The wood cracked, the door shuddered, and then, without warning, it swung open by itself. The room inside was a nursery. Toys lined the shelves. A rocking horse stood in the corner, and in the middle was a crib. Something inside it shifted. Marissa grabbed Eli's arm. "Don't!" But he stepped closer, raising the flashlight. Inside the crib lay a bundle wrapped in a pale yellow blanket. It wriggled. A soft sound came from within, halfway between a baby's coo and something else, something wet. The blanket fell away. It wasn't a baby. The thing inside had skin too gray, too thin, stretched over bones that seemed sharp enough to tear through. Its eyes were dark pits, endless, and its mouth opened wide, wider than any mouth should, as if it were grinning at them. Then the crying started, high-pitched, piercing, not from the crib, from the walls, the floor, the ceiling. Dozens of voices wailing at once. The door slammed shut behind them. Jonah dropped his phone. The screen shattered, but it still recorded the chaos. Flashes of movement, the sound of screams, the nursery toys clattering to life on their own. The rocking horse moved without anyone touching it. Dolls turned their heads to watch. The mobile above the crib spun faster and faster until it snapped, the pieces flying like knives. They tried the door, but it wouldn't budge. The window was nailed shut. Then the crying stopped. Silence. The creature in the crib sat up, slowly, its jaw unhinged. And in a voice that was not a baby's, not human at all, it whispered, "We've been waiting." The flashlight flickered out. On the outskirts of a quiet mountain town lay a stretch of forest no one entered after dusk. The trees were taller there, older than the town itself, their trunks so thick that even in daylight, little sun reached the ground. Marla, a hiker who prided herself on going where others refused, decided one autumn evening to venture in. She dismissed the locals' warnings as folklore. The forest remembers, they told her, and it whispers back. At first it was just a forest like any other. Damp earth, fallen needles, the smell of pine. But as she went deeper, she noticed something unusual carved into the bark of the trees. Words, names, hundreds of them, etched crudely, one on every trunk. Some were old, their letters worn thin. Others looked fresh, as though carved only days ago. She traced one with her fingertip, Daniel Ward, 1963. Another, Eliza Monroe, 1987. Still another, newer, Thomas Keene, 2021. A shiver crawled through her. Then she heard it, the whisper. At first it was only the wind sighing through the needles, but as she stood still, the sound formed into shapes, into words. Her name, Marla! She spun around, heart hammering. No one was there, only the endless wall of trees. She hurried on, deeper into the woods until she came to a clearing where a single massive oak stood at the center. Its bark was covered, top to bottom, in fresh carvings. She leaned closer, breath catching. There in neat letters was her own name, Marla Vance, 2023. The carving was damp, the wood still raw, as if cut minutes ago. The whisper rose again, but this time it came from the ground. She looked down. The soil at her feet was soft, disturbed, as if something beneath had been buried shallow. Something that had only just stopped moving. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. With trembling hands, she pulled it free. A new notification blinked across the screen. Marla Vance has checked in at the Forest of Names. Her throat tightened. She hadn't touched her phone. The forest whispered once more, louder this time, a chorus of voices overlapping in the dark. Welcome back, Marla. She dropped the phone and ran. But every tree she passed carried the same fresh carving now. Her name over and over, cut into the bark as though it had been waiting all along. Eleanor often drove late at night, the kind of drives where the highway stretched endlessly, and the radio only whispered static between faraway stations. She liked the solitude. The silence kept her thoughts in order. One Friday, leaving her office after midnight, she chose the old county road, a straight shot through farmland, 20 miles shorter than the highway. Locals avoided it, saying it was cursed, but Eleanor dismissed that as rural gossip. A road was a road. The first few miles passed easily. Broken fences, pale barns, the glint of dew on tall grass. Then something strange. She noticed a weather-beaten sign on the side of the road that read, Hollis Creek, 2 miles. 5 minutes later, she saw the same sign again. Same dent in the metal. Same spray of bullet holes through the letter R. She slowed, frowning. Perhaps she hadn't noticed the first sign correctly, but then it happened again. And again, the same stretch of road, repeating in perfect detail, the sagging fence, the rusted tractor half swallowed by weeds, the crooked oak tree with its branches stretching out like arms. She pulled over, heart thudding. Her phone had no signal. The dashboard clock ticked toward 2:43 a.m., yet it had read 2:43 a.m. the last 3 times she looked. It was then she saw the figure. Far down the road, illuminated by her headlights, a man stood. Not walking, not hitchhiking, just standing perfectly still in the middle of the asphalt, his head tilted, almost curious. Eleanor gripped the wheel, locked in place. The man raised one hand, slow and deliberate, as though beckoning. His skin was pale, too pale. She slammed the car into reverse, spinning around to flee back the way she came. The road behind was empty farmland at first, until the signs reappeared. Hollis Creek, 2 miles. The oak tree, the tractor, and then the man. But this time, he was closer. She drove faster, the engine whining. The same landmarks whipped by, loop after loop, and each time the man was nearer, his pale face clearer, his raised hands sharper in the glow of her headlights. Her car sputtered. The fuel gauge dipped toward empty. She glanced back to the clock. Still 2:43 a.m. Still, always 2:43. When she finally ran out of gas, Eleanor realized what the curse of the road truly was. Not the looping miles, not the broken time. It was that no matter how fast you drove, the man always caught up. And when he finally reached her window, smiling with teeth that were too many, she understood why no one took the county road anymore. No one who did ever came back to say why. Maya always felt uneasy in her grandmother's house. It was too quiet, even in the middle of the day. No traffic noise reached it, no birds sang in the trees outside. What unnerved her most, though, were the mirrors. Every room had one. Hallways were lined with them. Some leaned against walls in mismatched frames. Others hung where windows should have been. Some were so old their surfaces were spotted and darkened, but all of them reflected her in strange, uncomfortable ways. They seemed to warp her expression, or stretch her limbs, or catch her from an angle she hadn't moved into yet. Her grandmother used to joke that the mirrors kept her company, that they remembered more than people did. Maya never laughed. On the second night of her stay, as she brushed her teeth, she noticed something wrong. Her reflection's movements weren't perfectly matched. It was only by a beat, a blink lasting longer than hers, a smile tugging at lips that should have been still. She leaned closer, breath fogging the glass. The reflection's lips parted slightly, though Maya's did not. Maya dropped her toothbrush into the sink. The reflection smiled. Her blood ran cold. She stumbled backward into the hallway, but the sensation of being watched only grew. The mirrors along the corridor glowed faintly, as though moonlight pooled inside them, even though the house was pitch dark. She couldn't help but glance, just for a second, and every reflection was wrong. In one, she stood with her head tilted too far to the side, neck at a sick angle. In another, her eyes were rolled completely white. In another, she stood grinning with her teeth bared, lips stretched impossibly wide. They all moved in unison. Their mouths opened and closed, silently forming words. Maya didn't want to know what they were saying. She ran, down the hallway, down the stairs, toward the front door. But as she reached for the knob, the tall mirror beside it began to crack. A jagged fracture ran down its length, splintering outward. Then another. Then another. The sound was deafening. Glass exploded into the room as someone stepped out. It was her. Same face, same clothes, same eyes. But its smile was wrong. Too sharp, too hungry. Behind her, every mirror in the house rattled violently, as if something pressed against them from the other side, eager to get out. Maya tried to scream, but the double lunged forward, clamping a hand over her mouth. The skin was ice cold. With her free hand, the reflection dragged her toward the broken mirror. Maya kicked, clawed, struggled, but the glass didn't cut the thing's hands. It didn't even bleed. The mirror's surface rippled like water as her head was shoved closer and closer. On the other side, dozens, hundreds of other Mayas waited in the dark, their faces twisted into monstrous parodies of hers. They pressed against the glass, desperate to pull her through. The last thing Maya saw before the surface swallowed her was her grandmother's smiling reflection, watching from the farthest corner.